and this is important, is just assume that your model works, and works perfectly, and then think about why that's such a good thing. So if the debate is about giving the Indigenous population seats in Parliament, why do we want to do that? Like, just assume that works well, and we get awesome political representatives in Parliament. Why would we want to have that policy? Like New Zealand does this, they've allocated seats for the Maori population. Why do you think New Zealand did it? Nobody can think of it.
To give those people representation so that they can, so that they don't feel, for lack of a better word, had that way. Yeah,
great. So that they get representation in Parliament, in the highest decision-making body in the land. Why is it important we have equal representation or something suggesting equal representation in Parliament? Good. Any other reasons? Great, yeah. We have different interests, so we need different types of representatives. Any other reasons? Pardon?
If they're not heard in government hall, so they can be heard.
That's right. It's the only forum where they'll have meaningful representation. So they're all really great principal justifications for that affirmative case. And by assuming that your model works and works really effectively, you can get to the principal justification. Another example is something like that we would lift the ban on street prostitution. And maybe that's not a great example. Maybe we just say we would lift the ban on recreational drugs. We would legalise recreational drugs. If your model works perfectly, everybody takes them in a pretty harmless way. They'll go to their doctor, get a prescription for marijuana or whatever it is, and everybody uses it in a fairly benign way. Why do we want that to occur? And the reason we want that to occur is because of the principal justification, which is that they've chosen to, and we believe in liberty and freedom, and people making their own choices, and that's why we want this model to occur. And yeah, there'll be all other kinds of problems, like are they actually making a choice, are they addicted to the drug, are they being pressured into it? We just assume they're making a free choice, and then think of justifications for why that's a good thing. And generally, a principled argument will have a name that you've heard of before, like, we think this facilitates freedom of choice, or we think this facilitates equality, or we think this will create security and safety for people. Any other questions or thoughts about how to come up with arguments? Anybody else have any good ways to come up with arguments that they use in prep? I think what I meant by that was that agency is the ability to make meaningful choices. So if you have agency, then you have the ability to kind of make a decision and then act upon it. So if we give 16-year-olds the ability to vote, they'll have more agency, at least democratic agency to make choices. Any other thoughts on some of the arguments? Cool. Alright, this is about how we make arguments better, which I think is crucial to debating, because I think most people can come up with 4 or 5 arguments, like I said. It's really about making those arguments good. And you have to do 2 things to make an argument work in a debate. You have to show how your proposed policy achieves a certain outcome. So that's the mechanism part of the argument. And you also have to show why it's important that we achieve that outcome. And that's the principal part of the argument. So an example in the climate change debate is we think we should have an ETS because we think that will significantly reduce carbon emissions. So that's the outcome we want, and you'll have to go through the how. How does the market-based mechanism work? Why will it actually reduce carbon emissions? Why will it do it in an efficient way? And then the why part of the argument is why it's important that we reduce carbon emissions. And if that's going to be an agreed point in the debate, you'll have to look for something that's different. So why is it important that we achieve carbon reduction through a market mechanism as opposed to a direct action or a tax? And sometimes either the how or the why might not be contested in a debate. So if it's debate about that we should invade Zimbabwe, both sides are going to have arguments about how all these people are dying, either because we've been raiding, we're going to bomb the shit out of Ferrari, that's going to kill a lot of people, or because if we don't do anything, then these people are going to die because of hyperinflation and starvation and famine and stuff. So both sides are going to agree that loss of life is tragic and bad and needs to be stopped. Really the question that debate is going to be about the mechanism, about which model is more likely to cost human lives. Or sometimes it's the opposite. The how is agreed upon and the why is contested. So an example from that hate speech debate, I'd say it's about terrorism. We should abolish, get rid of groups like the Tamil Tigers that are kind of marginally involved in terrorist campaigns. And both sides might agree that that action sends a message. And one side will say, oh, this sends a message to terrorists that what they're doing is wrong. We think that by doing this we'll send a message that their actions and their politics aren't accepted by society. And the other side might say, oh, we think it sends a message to society at large that, to hate all Sri Lankans and to hate, anybody associated with that type of political freedom. So both sides will agree that the government's action is sending a message. The contested issue in that circumstance is which is the more important that we achieve, which message is more important that we send. Does that make sense? And also, I think you can also be more sophisticated. So if it's a debate about asylum seekers, people often talk about, this sends a message. It sends a message to the asylum. If we have mandatory detention, this sends a message to the asylum seekers that they're going to get locked up and they're not welcome. Or this sends a message to rednecks that they can be racist and they have license to beat down refugees. Both sides might agree that it sends a message, but if you can be more sophisticated and look at actually who's sending a message and who are they sending it to, you can make your arguments more sophisticated. It's not like refugees that are about to get on a boat out of Afghanistan are watching ABC 24 and give a shit what we're doing in Parliament, so they're probably not getting the message, whereas people that do follow Barnaby Joyce's work very closely in Queensland will get the message and they'll get it loud and clear. So sometimes, even where it looks like both sides agree on the how, you can break it down and find points of difference, like I said before. So how can you effectively articulate that your model will achieve something? And I think this is the same no matter what debate you're in. And that's for a few reasons. I think that, so what is it? I think you basically just have to talk about the individuals involved, about the individuals that are affected by the policy and how they will respond to that policy. Because in an 8-minute speech, you're never going to be able to talk with any sophistication about how 1 billion people are going to act, or about how a large group of people will act, or about how somebody that you don't really know that well, like Kim Jong-il, is going to respond. But you can talk about how individuals will react to policies. You can make characterisations about the actors in the debate that make your narrative of how people will respond to a certain policy more believable. So, in a debate, in almost all debates, they'll have different competing characterisations. Are the actors rational or irrational? Are drug addicts ever going to respond to monetary incentives not to take drugs? Are they acting rationally or irrationally? Is Kim Jong-il a rational or irrational actor? Would he ever respond to sanctions, or is he just batshit crazy? Are the groups in the debate, or are groups of people in the debate different or similar? So if we're talking about the international adoption debate, about people coming out, are the kids that are coming out from Eastern Europe the same or different to the kids that are being adopted in Australia? Do they have different needs or similar needs? How are you going to characterise those actors? The next thing is, are people motivated by ideology or by tangible factors? If it's a debate about giving ransom to kidnappers, are those people motivated by ideology? Are they trying to behead people for ideological gains? Or are they motivated by the money involved? So you need to think about that characterisation. And also, do people want short-term or long-term gain? Are people after money tomorrow, or after they money in a week's time or a year's time? So think about all the different ways that you characterise the actors, and then think about how they'll respond to the model. So if it's a debate about legalising prostitution, think about whether or not you think that prostitutes are acting irrational or rationally or irrationally. Are the people that go into street prostitution the same as people who go and work in legal brothels? Are they motivated by ideology? Probably not, unless they're prostitutes who are members of the sex party. And are they motivated by short-term things or long-term things? Are they actually going to be motivated by the threat of punishment at some indeterminate point in the future, or are they going to be motivated by the need for cash today? So think about how you characterise the actors in the debate, and this includes international relations debate. If you're talking about a terrorist group, they're going to respond to incentive structures in the same way as most other groups in society, assuming you go through this checklist of how people do and don't respond to things. And the other way that you can convince an audience that something will happen, that your policy will achieve a certain outcome, is to think about if it's happened before. Ideally, with similar actors, but if not, you can use analogies. We think that an emissions trading scheme will work effectively in Australia because it's working in the European Union. We think that sanctions will work against Libya because they worked previously when we got them to end their nuclear program. Try and use analogies where similar things have happened previously. Any questions about the how part of your debate? Does that make sense? Because that's crucial. People often skip over talking about how their mechanism will actually achieve a certain outcome, and they'll leap right into talking about why it's really important that we do something. Or we think it's so important that we save the elephant. They don't actually talk about how a ban on ivory trading does or doesn't achieve that.
And structure-wise, would you recommend that the how goes kind of after the model per se, or would that be inherent within it?
I think that often the how and the why should all, every argument should be discrete and separate and have a how and a why component. So if it's that international adoption debate, you want to have an argument and say, we think this is hugely dislocating for children that are being brought to Australia. And how is that happening? Well, the children get brought here, we create a market for it effectively. I think it's dislocating because they don't speak the language, they don't have any relatives, they're taken away from their culture, it's a huge culture shock. Why does that matter? Well, they're kids, they're vulnerable, they're young, they don't have any choice or agency. So every argument in that debate is going to have a how and a why component. And if your arguments are kind of, this is how we're doing it, and this is why we're doing it, then the argument's going to be problematic. And people talk about, I don't know, one professor, pyramid debates, where you only have one how and a whole bunch of reasons for doing it. So I think I did a debate once on it was a shit topic. It was like that we should label foods with their carbon emissions. Label products with this water bottle released, a fifth of a tonne of carbon in production, and that's what we had to debate. And so we had one argument which was, we think this will increase consumer awareness. That was the how. Consumers will be more aware of the amount of carbon they emitted, and we just had 5 reasons why that was a good idea. And so it's like your case is a pyramid. You have the model at the very top, and you have one argument about how it's going to achieve something, and 5 reasons why increased consumer awareness of carbon emissions is a good idea. And we lost that debate because all they had to do was say, well, actually, consumers aren't going to give a crap, just like they don't give a crap about nutritional labels, so there is no increased consumer awareness, so your 5 benefits are bunk. And so you have to be really careful about not just having one how in your case, but making sure that all of your 5 arguments have discrete defences for how your model will achieve it. That's right, you know what it is like. Okay, I'll be quick because I think I have to finish soon. I think this is one of the most important parts of argument construction, and that's saying why it's important that we achieve a certain outcome. And there are some very easy ways, very persuasive ways of convincing an audience and your adjudicator that your outcome matters. And that's firstly by talking about the numbers of people affected. Say, well, look, the only people that are really going to be affected by the proposed carbon tax are those handful of people in the middle income bracket that are actually going to be affected by the price increases and aren't going to get compensation from the government. Or you can say, well, we think this is going to affect a very large number of people because the restriction on individual liberty can affect everybody. So we think this affects all 20 million Australians or all 1 billion Chinese. Also think about the length of time that the harm or benefit lasts for. If the argument is about allowing ASIO to detain people for 72 hours, that sucks that it's only 72 hours. The potential costs of allowing a terrorist act to transpire last forever. People can die, it can destroy economies, it can lead to wars. So think about the length of harm, the time that harm will last for.
It's what this is about motivation.
Ah.
So if you are debating with another song, you might want to leave their confidence, but the rest of us can't. you can be